I'm Rob.
I'm E.
And I'm Jacob Rosenberg.
Welcome to the next movement.
Pyro, y'all. It's not a wrong thing to be addicted to the microphone like a heroin fiend. I'll tell you one thing, you never catch me fronting as I proceed to give the people what they want. You making some green, but not for glamour or fashion. I'm stacking cash until I can get moms a mansion. All from rapping. Nah, man, there's many plans like investing in land. It started all from impressing the fans with brand new flows. And you know, all the way from gangster clones to weirdos. Fools use those, but we ain't tripping. Give respect when you see this. You need us or your rap's underdeveloped like a fetus.
Those that know not those, and it shows when we broke out the knock hoes, hopped out they clothes. That's positive feedback. Yup, the pros are poised. We never pose, you'll never know. From 93 till infinity, we've been inventive. Creating the bump is our only incentive, and it's been a long time since I feel I've been felt. But the only thing I fear is fear itself. So you know what we got to do? Maybe could we keep it within the groove like it should be?
Jacob Rosenberg. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Great to chat with real hip hop heads. And, Tommy talked you guys up a lot, and he's just such a great guy. And really, man, he made a song during the pandemic, that record that he came out with that really hit me really, 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 really deeply in a really amazing way. So love Tommy and appreciate him, and great to be connected.
Shout out to Controller 7 for
Yes.
facilitating this. Well, Jacob, there is so much that we could talk about to your career, but I think the main focus of our time today is your new book, Right Before My Eyes. I love the title of the book because looking through it really feels like I'm watching you and your career like take off right before my eyes. The book obviously covers a very specific period of your life and your career, 1988 through 1998. The description of the book on your website calls it, quote, an immersive decade-long journey capturing the vibrancy of skate and hip-hop culture from 88 to 98. What felt important to you about documenting this specific time period, and what made you want to do it at this point in your life?
When I was a kid, I didn't know, I had no design to, the path of my life. I didn't feel like, oh, this series of events is going to happen. I really was thrown into a real genuine momentum. And, I popped my head up a couple of times. That is to say, I reflected on where I was going. And the first time was after I finished a skateboard video with my mentor called Virtual Reality. And then he passed away shortly after. And I kind of popped my head up a little bit to check, where am I at? What am I doing? Where am I going? And put my head back down and really focused on Hyro, as a sort of surrogate way of staying really connected to something that provided me with purpose. And then I think I popped my head up kind of a number of years later and really looked back and was like, wow, that was kind of a moment. But life, you just kind of move, and you rarely, sometimes we think and we ruminate on stuff and it means stuff to us. But I don't think it was until I was creeping up towards my 50th birthday, and I really felt this really strong pressure to like create a book about growing up in this era. And I was too intimidated to make a book on my skateboarding life because there's trauma and deep stuff in there, and I was like, I'm not ready for that. So I was like, I'm going to make a Hyro book, and I started discussing it with a friend, and I just wanted to share the archive. That was the intent. It was like, oh, I just want people to see all these photos and see all these things. And as I started to put the book together and envision it with my friend Greg Hunt, it was like, well, we kind of have to tell a little bit of the skateboarding story because I don't get to Hyro without skateboarding. So that, the first third of the book is really that skateboard journey, and then it turns into this, real immersion with Hyro. But I think it was just that feeling of, man, I got to do this. And then it was this real organic, I'm talking over a 5-year period of time thinking about these things. I don't want to give the impression that I was like, I'm going to make a book and I made the book in a year. It's like these things take so much time. I always tell creative people to not be so hard on themselves when a project is trying to find itself. But when you do feel it and you're in that momentum, which was for me about in kind of the second half of 2023, it's like you got to lean in and you got to make it, you're as much feed it, and I fed it in the end of 2023 and then the first, 7 or 8 months of 2024. And that's when it really took life.
I often think of works like Right Before My Eyes as time capsules because they function
Mm,
as historical archives that allow us to stay connected to the past.
mm,
Your book feels like more than that, though. To echo what Rob just said, we're learning about this period of hip hop and skateboarding culture through your experiences, through the telling of your story. So I'm wondering how you would define Right Before My Eyes as a project and who or what influenced the direction you took with it.
that's a really great question. I think that's a great way of seeing the work because I think that it is a time capsule because it's technically artifacts and instances of life that happened in this window. So if you just turn the page, you see style, you see dress, you see, choices that people make. I think where the book becomes something more is when you see my handwriting in my notebook. You see, I think of my binder from the Dell interview, which is a really huge moment in my life professionally, where I finished these skateboard videos and I was friends with Ken Block and Damon Way, who started DC Shoes eventually, but their first company was called Drawers Clothing, which became DC. And they were starting a magazine, just like Big Brother. Skateboarding had a magazine called Big Brother, which is very anti-establishment and really backwards in many ways, but skateboarding does that. And they were going to make this snowboard magazine called Blunt Magazine. And I pitched them. I'll interview Dell because I wanted to meet Dell. And they approved it. And then I went on this journey of interviewing Dell. Now, mind you, I'd done some skateboard interviews before, but that was the first time I approached, a subject in that way. So I think the book, it's a time capsule of that moment, but it's this very intimate look at a creative process and a creative voice. Because I really had no roadmap from anyone about what I was doing. And I don't mean to say that to give me any extra credit, because I don't deserve credit for that. Like, that's your own internal momentum, right? That you hope you have. But I didn't know how to, I literally had no idea how to conduct an interview with a musician. like, what am I supposed to talk about? And I still have the audio tape, which is in the book, and I still have the transcript and everything. And it's like Chris Farley, interviewing on Saturday Night Live, Paul McCartney, right? He's like, when you did this, man, and but it's so charming because Dell to this day, he's like, man, blood, that's like one of the best interviews. That's like one of my favorite interviews. And it's really just like two people talking. And am so curious. I'm like, so are you like making beats and stuff? Or like, how do you like think about a song? And so I think that the expansion out of the time capsule comes from a bit of that innocence. I think the book has a really innocent quality where you're like, I was trying very hard to make it, but I wasn't like trying hard. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like we love artists who don't try hard. Dell being the best example of it. He doesn't give a fuck. He is who he is, and we love him for that. His expression, his things, and you catch him in a certain way, he'll say something crazy. I'm not that, but I think the book has this access to like a creative voice as it's expressing something.
Mm.
And in that way, it becomes more than a time capsule. It becomes a really intimate personal document. And I think for me, I feel so fortunate to have witnessed that. And then there's an aspect where I know that I was a part of it. I know that I made choices and I searched out music and I put music in videos, and I know I focused on Hyro, and I know, when Stinky was doing the website, I was like, I am going to do a profile on this. And I know there's, thousands of Hyro fans who the only way they got any Hyro news was through my images and my photographs.
Mm.
But that was just me, like, I just got to do this. So I
Yeah.
think I think it's that, you know, everything I'm talking about is so abstract, but it's that wrapping of the personal takes and the intimacy and the closeness of someone who's not trying so hard, but is like so passionate about what they're doing. And I would say there's one journal entry that's probably one of my favorite things in the book, which some people are getting to a granular level where they're reading all my journals and entries and everything. But I'm flying back from the Hawaii music video from You Never Knew, and I literally say like I did the best I can. I wish the guys in the crew cared as much as me. And when you get to that level, and I love those guys, but that's the
Mhm.
truth at that time. They
Yeah.
didn't want to be in Hawaii, but the video doesn't showcase that, you know? So I think
Yeah.
that to me, like that's what I love about the depth that it takes on at a deeper or a more granular level.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm imagining that, like all the photos that we see and right before my eyes, you probably have a pretty significant film archive that also captures special moments from the same period. So I was wondering why a book and not a documentary?
My gosh, you got two great questions in a row because the book felt like I don't know how to explain it. I know how to abstractly explain it. The book feels like it could be ambiguous enough for you to feel what I want you to feel.
Hmm.
A documentary, you really have to chase a story. To justify and validate a documentary, I have to create plot points, momentum. Uh, I have to have a structure, a beginning, a middle, an end. If I'm making a documentary, someone's probably paying for it, and then I'm going to have to pitch them and sell them on what the documentary is. And then the moment that happens, you're manufacturing a sense of structure and a sense of like narrative story that is what happened, but it's also an amplification of it because the audience for documentaries is like, well, what's the hook? So I think to me, like making a book felt like I could really make a very open statement that I know what I'm trying to say, even though it's abstract. Like I didn't want to make something that was trying to over dramatize this moment. And there has been a young filmmaker that I'm working with who has been documenting a bit of me and interviewing everyone in this world, and he's kind of working on something, but I'm a little too close to it. You
Hmm.
know, I think I'm inside of that story. You know, maybe there's a story about Embarcadero in San Francisco that I'm in a fortunate position to be able to tell. Maybe there's a self-reflexive story about me and skateboarding, but it just really felt like the book was something you could have and hold without knowing me at all and feel something and come back to it. And the film just felt like maybe I would have to try too hard for something that's so organic.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Didn't think about it that way, but
I
yeah.
mean, you know, look, I don't want to throw shade, you know, because it's how much time goes into those projects. But you know, the Souls documentary, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I'm living through in that, and I'm like, I'm gonna have my own opinions about what I think the story is, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe I would just focus on Dell. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, I'm only gonna point my camera at what interests me, and like,
Hmm.
the homie is one of my favorite human beings. So like, I'm like, I kind of want to. I'd probably focus on that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Makes sense.
You know.
I don't know too much about skateboarding. I will admit that.
Mm,
But absorbing it from an outside perspective, just kind of like looking into it through works like this and seeing the relationship that it has with hip hop through your book and other places as well. I feel like the one thing that the two culture shares, well, maybe one of the few things a culture shares is that they're led and shaped by the youth.
mm,
And it feels like that's one narrative that you're using to help folks feel connected to your book. One of the best examples of this for me is the image that you have of the two kids in their room. I think it's titled Childhood Bedroom. The
yeah,
walls are decorated with loads of posters, including
yeah.
this giant one of Michael Jordan. There's a magazine and a VHS tape on the floor. And so when I looked at this picture, it immediately took me back to my teenage years, and this
Yeah.
wave of nostalgia hit me. And
Right.
because my bedroom looked just like that.
Yeah.
And and the pictures I saw after that had even more of a special feel to them after
Yeah.
seeing this one. And so on the other side of the spectrum, I can easily see a much younger person picking
Yeah.
up this book, looking at the same image, and being drawn further into right before my eyes because they're curious about the past and they want to see how teenagers like them live their
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
So when right before my eyes was coming together, did it feel important that the book reach and connect various generations in this way?
I didn't really I didn't really focus in that way on it, you know. Your observations are great because that image is an incredible totem, if you will, in the book because there's a mirror image with Dell and Tyson, Dell's brother who passed away. From the that's the that I'm interviewing. I basically interviewed Dell in that bedroom from basically the position that I was in when I took that photo. Um, and that's my childhood bedroom. That's a friend named David Tullis and another friend named Nick Wright, and that was the vibe. I was, that was 1988 in my bedroom, and I don't think I've ever considered. I mean, I know skateboarders and Hyro fans because you kind of have to say in your head, like, am I going to be able to sell this book? But I don't think I ever considered an audience.
Mm,
I just have, Greg Hunt is a skateboarder, skateboard filmmaker, incredible photographer, and he was my editor. And then Alexander Hansford, incredible card magician and book publisher and book designer from the UK, who is not a skateboarder. So Greg and I, it's really was just about kind of finding this flow and unpacking these textures. But I don't think I ever considered like, oh, kids would connect with this. I think the book has so much, imagery and energy, that image that you're talking about, like immediately after that is like video frame grabs of me grabbing the camera from my friend. And you can kind of see like, we're just kids out, like doing shit,
yeah.
you know? Um, but I don't know why I have those photos, but I do, I took these photos. There's another photo and it was a little bit of a conscious choice not to use it because at the end of the book, there's like a self-portrait in Hawaii from You Never Knew. But I have that same angle of my bedroom and it's a self-portrait of me. And I'm doing what now is commonly referred to as a selfie, but it's a film little portrait of me, like holding the camera out. And we didn't use it because, the view through my eyes was more rich to
Mm,
observe and
yeah.
feel less intentional. But yeah, I mean, my kids are kind of interested in it. They're 12 and 14. They love Dell because he's so like candid and like he is just a kid, at heart. But they're not, they are too young to kind of be as interested. I think I've engaged with some older kids, 18, 19, 20. They just go like, man, I wish I was, I wish I was alive in that era,
Yeah.
you know, which I'm like, okay, good. That like kind of mission accomplished, maybe
Yeah, right.
maybe they'll buy a tape cassette after that,
Yeah.
1989, the number, another summer. Sound of the funky drummer. Music hitting your heart, cause I know you got soul. Hey, listen if you're missing, y'all. Swinging while I'm singing. Hey, giving what you're getting. Knowing what I'm knowing. While the black band's sweating. In the rhythm I'm rolling. Gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey, our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be.
As a part of our time today, we definitely want to ask you about some of the specific images in the book and the stories.
Please.
So on page 30 and 31, there's a photo of you sitting near Chuck D. He's in
Yeah.
Raiders baseball jersey and cap, focused on something outside the frame. You're looking at the camera. This was apparently from a speaking event at Stanford in 1990.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you remember about that day?
I remember everything about that day. Part of my awakening into hip hop was about understanding Black and African American culture at a deeper level and understanding a history of generational trauma, and really beginning to feel like it was important to be educated about people and things like Malcolm X. And so because of Chuck D, had read the autobiography of Malcolm X as a teenager, and Chuck was going to be speaking at this Malcolm X event at Stanford. And I think this is 1990 or something, like, right. I think it's right around 1990. So I felt like I must attend, this Chuck D speaking event. So I went, and I have a ton of photographs of him on stage that I took. They didn't feel right for the book because the sequence of that image and the photo of his afterward is a conversation about wanting to be in a moment, and then you see me in the moment, which is basically what the book is about: wanting to be in skateboarding, and then I get there; wanting to be a part of Hyro, and then I get there. But that photo is me. I want a photo with Chuck, and that photo you're talking about is me saying to my friend, hold on," and he's like, my friend has my camera already set up, and he's like, click. So it's the kind of outtake photo from that. But Chuck got on stage and or at a sort of pulpit, and talked to everybody. And I have an autographed flyer from the Malcolm X event signed by Chuck, and then I got those two photos. So it was a really important thing. I was in a rap group, when I was in high school, and you know Charles Wiedenauer was my guy. Like, I can't emphasize enough, like, how much as a human he, like, opened my eyes to so many things at that time.
Yeah, you and many others.
Yeah.
Page 48 of the book and several
Yeah.
pages that follow highlight the questionable video.
Mm.
This was also 1991. My understanding is that this was an early skate video that you were involved in.
Mhm. Yep.
It features, I know this because of the artifacts that
Yeah.
features music from artists like The Doors, Primus, Bad Brains, Naughty by Nature, Foo Schnickens, and Dell, to name a few. Like E, I'm not tapped into the skate world. I played a ton of Tony Hawk Pro Skater when I was in college, though, so I recognize at least some of the names in this video, like Rodney Mullins.
Yeah.
Could you help us put this video in context for us, both in terms of your career and the wider world of skating?
Absolutely. So I'll start with that, and then maybe if it's appropriate to dovetail into something that was a conversation with Domino, I think that'll help align things to hip hop really clearly. 1991 is a year of tremendous change in skateboarding. And what's happening is you have the vertical ramp skaters that are kind of becoming very antiquated, and you have these technical young street skaters becoming the norm. Spike Jonze and Mark Gonzalez make a video called Video Days for the company Blind. Very famous skateboard video that kind of is like pushing towards this new technical street skating moment. The company Blind was under a masthead called World Industries, which Rodney Mullen and Steve Rocco started as a sort of counter response to Powell Peralta, which everyone would know as the Bones Brigade and sort of the big brand of skateboarding. So in 1991, and the questionable video is released in 1992. In 1991, there was a sort of super team of skateboarders that was formed by an incredible filmmaker and company owner named Mike Ternasky. And that company was called Plan B Skateboards. And it was a bunch of skaters from a bunch of different teams. And it was just legitimately this new era of technical street skating and sort of mastery on a level that really hadn't been seen or done. And the questionable video is a line in the sand and a demarcation of, this is what great skateboarding is right now. And it is incredibly curated music. It is incredibly curated parts that are edited a certain way, that are using certain music, that have slow motion in them. And the video is really a vision of Mike Ternasky, who was my mentor. And he hired me to come and work on that video. So I'd made a bunch of videos before that, but that's sort of my big first crowning achievement. And so the questionable video just sort of was like a baseball bat to the head, I'm trying to think. It's like, it's like Radiohead's second album, you know, it's like Tribe's second album, you know, it's like, you know, something comes in, you know, it's not to say it's like De La Soul is dead, but like, you know, I'm trying to think of the right hip hop comparison for it. Um, but it was really this statement about this is what the future of skateboarding is going to look like. And so at that time, it was the most popular video. A lot of people quit skateboarding because of it, because it was so technical and advanced. But what we did with those videos was we put all of this music that was really either triggering this sense of nostalgia, you know, like Rodney Mullen skating to It's a Wonderful World, which what skateboarding to Louis Armstrong doesn't make sense, but it made perfect sense when you see the skateboarding and how it was all slow motion and all of that. So, um, and then the other thing, which is important too, is you know traditionally black skateboarders, you know, didn't have rap music or any urban music that represented them. It was punk or rock or something like that. And in the Plan B videos, you know, Sean Sheffey, who's you know arguably one of the great street skaters of all time, he's skating to Fushnikins, Lush Move, and Sal Barbier skated to Dell. Um, so I think from a representation standpoint, the video is really important because it sort of signals this moment where like, no, we're telling you who we are through the music and through the parts. And so in terms of its place in the book, you know, this video, which I was a part of crafting and making, and I was a part of getting the music to make the videos, you know, I had a hand in the music that was used in some of those parts. And, you know, Sal Barbier wanted to have Dell because he was listening to Dell and we were all wearing Gerbos. And, you know, so that was appropriate. But it was in the process of getting and using that music for Sal and using the first Hyro group track called Burnt, which was a B-side on Mr. Dabalina 12-inch. I kind of got in touch with the group at that point. And that's why I have some of the frame grabs that kind of show that we're talking about the music. And so that I did all the credits and I did all the, you know, that music acquisition. So the questionable video really is this moment that says this is the future of skateboarding. And it's really stood the test of time. I mean, that video is still revered at the same scale that it was when it came out.
Amazing. On page 64 of the book, there are photos of the steno notepad with handwritten notes about the questionable video. And as we've been saying, there are images of those types of things, like scattered throughout the book. The first time I looked through it, I thought, like, you kept all this stuff. Like, you've held to these things. And I wonder, like, how come? Like, what was the thinking and holding on to, like, these notepads and stuff?
You know, that notepad is from the second Plan B video called Virtual Reality. And Virtual Reality was a video that I really had my hands completely in the selecting of the music and connecting and asking Hyro for music. That's kind of where the story shifts for me in terms of my personal relationship, which is why some of those pages have the Hyro notes called out on them, because that is a notebook. I get this question a lot. I think that I, as a human with my own pains and insecurities, needed these moments to feel successful and to feel grounded in life at that time. So 18-year-old Jacob or 19-year-old Jacob making virtual reality who had this notebook. It wasn't, I don't think I ever considered throwing something like that away if it was a part of that process. I think I felt so lucky to be a part of it that like throwing it away would maybe make that being a part of it less. So I think I preserve these artifacts as a way of staying tethered to things that are important to me. And the artifacts being alive or around me are kind of keeping some of that energy, which is a bit of that youthful energy, which is a bit of that ambition, you know, close to me. And so, you know, that being said, you know, a lot of them end up in tubs and different things and have traveled with me over the last 30 years. But, you know, I can still go in my garage or my storage unit and open a box and discover something. And, and that happened with the book. I found my college entrance letter, which is like a perfect letter to demarcate the middle of the book, which kind of like tells you what happened before and you could feel what's going to happen after. But I just save all the stuff. Like, I was talking to Domino because he's looking at everything I'm doing. He's like, God, I got to digitize all these old songs. And I'm like, you do, dude.
Yeah.
You really do. But he has all his tapes, So I think some people who make things, I know some friends who don't save anything. They throw it all away.
Mm.
They just are not interested in having stuff.
Yeah. Just real quick, on
Yeah.
one of those notepad pages,
Yeah.
hieroglyphics, and there's an 800 phone number listed.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
man.
was this phone number?
Dude, that's the Hyro hotline.
Hyro.
So in the book, there's the blue tape. And the blue tape, I mean, I know the purple tape is a thing and all this stuff and all that, but like the blue tape was the original colored tape that came out in hip hop. And it had Souls of Mischief on the A side and it had Casual on the B side. If you had that blue tape, you were listening to the best shit that no one had heard. And on the back of that tape, I believe there was the number for the Hyro hotline. And it was like you would call it and it was like, what's up? It's A plus. It's basically Souls and them being like, it's the Hyro hotline. Like it was just a cool thing to call. And you would hear the guys' voices. I don't know if I don't remember if there was anything more to it than that, but it was something that Jive set up. And the the purpose of that image in there at that time is like that's me writing hieroglyphics. So I think that's significant. And and then it's the phone number. And then you see the frame grab from the video that has the same name and the same phone number. So you're kind of seeing my process of how I've created the credits. So I had to call and I had to get the 800 number and I had to write it down somewhere. And I have that book.
You mentioned this just a little bit ago, and I'm glad you did because I had a question about it. But one of the most personal artifacts, it feels like to me in this book, is the personal statement that you sent to Emerson College when you applied there.
Yeah.
What does it feel like for you to read that now?
It's so interesting talking about that personal statement because I've had a number of friends tell me how emotional it made them to read it. I have it in the gallery show at Heavyweight right now. It's on the wall. It's sort of framed. When I see it, I just get really kind of proud of myself for getting through it. We all have stuff in our lives that holds us back and that's personal to us in our journey. And I don't want to diminish anyone else's journey or say my journey was particularly hard because it's littered with privilege. But there's a lot of stuff you have to work through when you are finding your way.
Mm.
And there's a confidence in that letter that's so baller. And I'm just like, no, like I say, like no matter what, I will become a filmmaker. And it's like, so I think it just is. It's really that letter is really important. It was really important for me to find and read because it was very late in the stage, and I actually found the Polaroids from the You Never Knew music video shoot. They were like at the bottom of. I didn't have those at a certain point, and I was like, oh my God, I found the Polaroids and the map. Two things that I knew existed. I knew that those things existed. And when I went through those, it was actually amongst all this other college stuff. And I started going to college stuff and I saw my entrance letter. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy. So I think it really sparked me to remember what I'm capable of, like, yes, I've had a successful career and like without a doubt. But like you still, as a creative person, you doubt yourself at every turn.
Mm.
Ambition, when it meets reality, sometimes it gets suffocated. And you go, I can't do this. Why didn't I make the documentary of this? Why didn't I? Was the book the easy way? I don't know. But that letter, like, just shows me that I could do it. That I had it in me, that I had the horsepower And I think it's important for people to know, like, I think every one of us, if you can get past that obstacle, could could likely achieve the thing that you want to achieve. I really believe that. I think our own personal life force is strong, and everyone has a life force that is strong enough to sustain them. But it's about the right time and the right place and the right chemistry of people to support that. And maybe you have to go to therapy to get rid of that one voice in your head that says all these things that you're gonna be like, that shit is not real, you know?
Yeah.
But that letter for me is just like reminds me that it's possible to do anything that I want to do. And doesn't mean it's easy, but it just means that you got to do it. And sometimes that's crippling, you know, because you go, well, that means that I got to do it. If I
Yeah.
say that, that means I got to do it.
Part of the book are these interviews that you did with Dell and Casual.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize this when I was reading them, but I did some Googling and you all were the same age, around the
Yeah.
same age when you had
Yeah.
these conversations with them. And it makes a lot of sense. You mentioned earlier that Dell still tells you that this is one of his favorite interviews. And it
Yeah.
makes sense to me now because it just was two teenagers talking to one another.
Yes.
And he probably felt really comfortable. But it made me wonder after I found this out, for you, was being in conversation in community with peers like this back then, watching people your age doing what they love to do, a significant thing for you to witness?
I mean, it was like an out of body experience. I was so shook by these guys. Like, I first hear Dell when I'm 18 or 19, and then I meet him when I'm 20. So we do that interview August 13th, 1993, and I'm 20 and he's 21. He's like he's savant level to me. Like I'm like this, I just I was I literally I was so nervous, and you can kind of hear it in my voice on the tape. And I just it was like I just, it's you kind of I think in that era, right, we all had posters on our walls of like these figures and these people, right? So, you maybe you love Dominique Wilkins, so you'd have that Dominique Wilkins basketball poster. I had the Michael Jordan poster on my wall. To me, like Dell was like a Jordan-esque talent in hip hop where but like not everyone knew, so it was even cooler, you know? Um, so I just felt really, really lucky. And then it was like I just was kind of curious about who is this guy really? But I wasn't on that intellectual level about it. I just was like, okay, well, explain this to me. And I think in the process of kind of simplifying the questions, like I just did not understand how a deal worked.
Mm,
I did not understand how, like, what are the ad libs in the song, in this chorus? Like, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? So I think the simplicity of the questions created like a really clear dialogue that was like, oh, nah, this is this and that's that. And it's like, oh, well, is this song a diss about this? It's like, no. And so I think it just was really a raw, organic thing. And then same with Casual, that's like a year later. And I think him and I are the same age. And I think at that point I had probably a little bit more confidence. I
mm,
kind of knew what I was trying to get out of that, you know.
yeah.
Casual's a little bit of a intimidating presence just because he's such a big guy, but he's also such a kid at heart, you
Mm,
know.
yeah.
He's one of my favorite MCs for sure.
Mm.
You think he raw, incredible record. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
On page 80 of the book, there are some photos of Dell and Saphir.
Yeah.
Saphir, of course, passed away last year, 2024. Rest in peace. I saw this on your IG page. You talked a little bit there about like that moment, like him being
Mm.
that moment. I just wondered if you could recount that for us.
Yeah, so Dell lived on San Pablo, the street that we're on, and this is I think it's like the Oakland Public Library, and I just needed to shoot portraits of Dell on the street, and Dell were on the street, and like Saphir rolled up, like literally walked up, and I'm a very young photographer, so, and I'm also like at heart like a bit of a documentarian, from with a verite influence, meaning, when something happens, I really try not to touch it. I try to just observe it. And I think that's my photography has always had that component to it. I'm not really good at staging photographs and saying this is cool, which is why it took, a while when I shot both sides of the brain for Dell, which I'm devastated that I don't have any of my source photography for that. But when I shot that, that was like really a culmination of like figuring out how to shoot studio, photography. But Sophia rolls up and we're in front of, this Oakland Public Library, and they're just talking amongst each other and I'm just shooting. And there's more photos than what's featured in the book. And you'll notice, there's a cool thing on that binder, which is for the Dell interview. There's a binder next to the cover magazine, and in this really nice handwriting, it says Sapphire, and that's Dell's handwriting, because I think at that time he didn't know how to spell Saphir's name, So, but I needed to know how to spell Saphir's name. So Dell wrote it because I was with him at that point, and he wrote it on the binder. That's like just a little Easter egg. But it was interesting because he had such a commanding presence now. And remember, Saphir at this point, no one really knew. I mean, if you're like a hip hop head in the Oakland, of course you knew who he was. But like the only way like average civilians knew who he was because he got killed in Menace to Society. So he's the guy that gets shot, was coughing up blood early in the film, and that was kind of its own like cool thing. Like, no way, that's crazy. He was in a movie, and I Menace Society is just an incredible film. The Hughes brothers, making Goodfellas for the Hood, were really amazing. Um, and it was just those guys just hanging out, and it really and what's crazy about him passing, not crazy, but like I just the energy of things are just so powerful. I was at Dell's and I had the book, and I shared it with him in like early November. And I asked about Saphir, and he was like, "Oh man, he's not doing so well. He's in a home and blah blah blah, and he's just had a really tough time." And it was, I think that it made him sad to think about. And then I was working, and Travis Jensen, who's this incredible street photographer from San Francisco, posted something about Saphir before he passed. And I DM'd him and I said, "Oh, I'd love to send you some of these photos and blah blah." And that triggered Travis and I to connect about something else. And then I was printing photos for my show, and I was like, I really want to make sure I have a photo of Dell and Saphir. So we printed that photo, and the very next day he passed. The day after printing that photo. So it was just that thing about energy, that like there was this gratitude for this guy and there was this connection, and he was like, kind of there through everyone in this, little fleeting moment. But it was, it felt, you get a sadness for people who pass. And I certainly had no close relationship with him, just a real respect and admiration as an artist. And he's very tied to Hyro's story. But it was like, all of a sudden it was like, wow, these photographs really are important now. And then it was like, for sure, I'm going to put them in the show. And I don't know, what I'll do with them at a later date, but there's, more photos there. But they were just two MCs talking, "Oh, what are you getting into? What are you getting into? Oh, what are you working on? What are you working on?" Oh, that type of a thing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
One of the many things I appreciate about your book is the way that Hyro is featured. I think you could have easily just shown us these incredible images that you captured of the group over the years, but your coverage of them goes much deeper than that. Did you highlight the relationship you had with them and the work that you did with them during this time and the way that you did throughout the book so that folks could really feel the impact it had on you?
I mean, I think it always, to me, it needed to feel like a journey in the book. It needed to feel like an unfolding. So the way the book structure came about was, it's sort of, I outlined based on little buckets of time. So like 96 to 97 is like recording Third Eye Vision. And then there's group photos, which is very specific. Now we're shooting photos for PR and for, 8x10 black and whites that are going to be used for press material. So I don't think there was a design of it other than it needed to feel like the early stuff is seeing them live, and that's like raw. And then I get access to Dell, and that's intimate and personal. And then I do casual, and that's intimate and personal. And then I'm seeing them live again in Boston, when I'm at college. And then I'm seeing them in the studio. So it really is a linear reaction to exactly kind of what the coverage was, but
Mm-hmm.
then curating the book to make sure that you are understanding like how I'd be in the car with them, and then I'd be shooting photos of them for an album cover or something like that. And then we'd be on the road in Colorado, and they'd be smoking weed in the back. And then we'd be on stage, and, be a bunch of white kids in the audience with snow boots on, and with a low ceiling, which is such a specific thing when you're like a indie hip hop act that's like touring, these small places packed with people. And so to me, I just wanted to convey that feeling. And then, of course, the book really opens up in Hawaii. Fortunately, that's the story. It all led, to that culmination of a place.
You mentioned the time spent in the studio with Hyro while they're
Yeah.
working on Third Eye Vision. What was the energy like in those sessions?
I don't know that I was ever like there 2 hours before anyone else got there. I was driving up from the South Bay, and it was up in San Ramon, I believe, which is north of the Golden Gate Bridge and northeast. And you know, I think those guys were really perfectionists. I remember A plus doing his ad libs and da 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 da. He's like, no, no, da 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 da, and they have a vision for the music at that time, and that my experience of that was like you 100% felt the crafting of something come together. So they would go in and I mean, I have behind the scenes footage of it, but everyone would go in and do their verse, and it would take sometimes it take an hour and a half to get to get a verse done. It had to be right. They would listen, they'd play it back, and they're studying the nuance of how it sounded, and so that level of like curation is pretty special to witness, because you would hope that these things take time in that way, that they're crafted just from the standpoint of being a fan. And then you would also hope that some things are just like thrown against the wall and they're amazing just as they are. But it was really like seeing, oh, this is what it's like to record a record. Like I really had never had that experience before of watching someone in a studio that had paid for their time and had the big board, and there's like a vocals booth, and and I'm setting up my camera and just kind of filming things, walking around, taking photos. And you know, I think guys were smoking a little bit and drinking a little bit, but I don't remember anyone doing any of that to a level that took them out of their ability to record the record. Because you also got to think like these are guys that like for 2+ years, because it was 96 that they recorded, they weren't in their deals, you know. And so getting back in the studio really, that's paid studio time, with Matt Kelly and Domino, that really felt important. And you could feel it, it definitely wasn't taken for granted.
Mm. You've mentioned the You Never Knew video shoot in Hawaii.
Yeah.
I love the images in the book of this time. I don't think I really ever considered the fact that they were in Hawaii when they made this video. It's interesting to hear you say like they didn't want to be in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Whose
Yeah.
decision was that? How did you all end up in Hawaii?
So the video happens in a somewhat tragic way for me, because there's a legendary photographer and music video director named Michael Lucero who did a lot of the early Hyro videos. He did 93 Till, which is masterpiece hip hop video, such a vibe and such a thing, and framing, I mean, all composition, all that stuff, transitions with the hand. And he was supposed to direct this video, and I was going to accompany him to just observe it so I could learn how to be a music video director. That was the literal goal with Domino. Like, of course, Jake, you can shoot behind the scenes and blah, blah, blah. Well, my goal unfortunately passed in a car accident a couple months prior to going and shooting the music video. And I have to go back to Domino and try to remember if it was always going to be Hawaii. But once he passed, they called and they said the crew really feels like, Jake, you should direct the video. And at first I said no. And then my roommate Alex was like, are you fucking tripping, dude? And so I called him right back and said, I'll do it. And my in my head, it was like going to be a sequel to 93 Till. And it was going to be like a tourism video of Hawaii, of like Hiro in nature, and they would all have cameras, and it would become like this photo collage of like all these snapshot moments. So every place we went would resolve in a photograph. And that idea quickly, disintegrated once you get there and start doing it. But some of those photographs and photography elements, stayed in the video and obviously play a big role in the culmination of the book. But I think it's just that thing, like they have that vibe that just connects them with nature in a way that feels right, And then really it was like we're scouting the island, and it was like we saw these things. I'm like, I want fucking Tajay to jump. I'm like, Tajay, are you cool jumping off this cliff? He's like, yeah, oh yeah, I'm cool jumping off the. And then it was like, great. And then it's like Jay Biz doing cartwheels and round off into the ocean, like all that stuff. Just it's like you'd never seen that before in a rap video, ever. And I also felt like incapable of making. Like in my head, I was like, oh, I love Hype Williams. I want to be in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm not that guy. I'm the Verite documentary guy. So like everything is like them and all these plays. We're getting kicked out of everywhere, and just this ragtag, thing of just shooting it.
Towards the end of Right Before My Eyes, there's another picture of you and Chuck D from 1991, and you include the following quote from him. The voice of rap music is lyrics on a microphone, born from a burning desire to express the human condition. The voice of skateboarding is tricks and style showcased against the terrain, seen through the lens of a camera. Skateboarding, like hip hop, is its own culture for individuals who don't feel like they fit into regular society. These cultures speak to the moment, and more than that, they're timeless. Again, I am an outsider in skateboarding culture, so I can't speak too much about it, but I imagine, like hip hop, it's experienced a lot of changes in the last 3 decades. And some things about the culture have probably remained the same, or timeless, as Chuck D says. Do you think these ebbs and flows and constants have allowed hip hop and skateboarding to maintain the same relationship that you experienced when you were capturing the cultures from 1988 to 1998?
That's a really good question. There was something in the water in the era that the book covers where there's a bit more of closeness and intimacy between skateboarding and hip hop. Now, that's not to say, Pharrell comes from hip hop. From skateboarding, but I think it's a bit more fringe now, maybe it was fringe then, but because it was the center of our world, it felt like a bigger thing. But, even if you go to the East Coast and you see like the Zoo York, mixtape skate video that really unpacks a connection with New York hip hop culture, what we were doing with Plan B and Hiro, like I feel, and this is this conversation I've been having with Domino, and I need to unpack it a little bit more in a scholarly way. I feel like the proliferation of video cameras amongst teenagers from 88 to 93 mirrors the SP 1200s. It mirrors the beat machines and 4-tracks that were becoming available for kids between 88 and 93 for hip hop. I actually need to hit some of my scholarly friends to work on that as a thesis, because I actually think that is the reality of that era, and why It's certainly why Hyro exists, because of the 4-track and because of the MIDI, beat machines. But 100%, like all Adele's early work, all of Hyro, they're recording themselves. They're doing what I was doing, recording themselves. And so I don't think that thing about the youth being the same age at the same time, kind of creating this thing, that doesn't exist anymore.
Hmm.
That being said, BLP Kosher is hella dope. He skates and he can do, switch kickflip back tails and switch 360 flips. And, so there's skaters who now are in hip hop and people who rap who skate, but it's not a complementary cultural connection. And what I would say is, like, in my era, and I don't want to take away from any other era, this is just my view on it. I believe that, like, we were kind of drafting off of the same momentum in each other. Like, it
Hmm.
was a real parallel. And by the way, if I was going to make a documentary, that's what the documentary would be about, what I just said, about
Hmm.
how video cameras and skate culture mirrored the beat machines, and and the 4-track. Basically having a 4-track recorder at home. You know, my favorite Dell songs are like all his 4-track shit that he made for No Need for Alarm. It's incredible. It's the most raw, pure shit I've ever heard in my life. Eye Examination and Crazy Dell song, those songs are absolutely incredible. And they just are, because he has the tools to do it. So people say, why are the Plan B videos incredible? Well, because we had the cameras to film the kids right in front of us. We had the editing equipment to do it, and we were like, no, we're not going to be antiquated. We're going to be, this is what we want to do. So I don't think there's that same alignment. I think it's different, and I think, to that extent, like, I love that Dell's, keyboard and sampler is in that bedroom photo, you know? But I think it's a technology story, in terms of, we were two cultures who, like, had this technology that came in, and through it, this, we were able to express ourselves in a new way.
Hmm. That's such a good comparison, and I would have never thought about that.
It literally came up when I was texting Domino about No Need for Alarm, just because I knew we were going to talk about it, and I wanted to make sure I had some of the things straight in my head, and wanted to get a couple nuggets from him. And it literally just, like, like David Lynch says, the ideas are out there. You just have to go fishing. I wasn't even fishing. I was just like, wait a minute, isn't this all just because of technology? Like, aren't I was 18 and filming. Isn't that just the equivalent of those guys using these MIDI samplers, and like sampling, and doing it at home though,
Hmm.
right? And recording on a 4-track. Isn't that the same? Because they couldn't do that in 1980. They could, but it wasn't as easy, right? It
Right.
was like, it was different.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah.
I hope something comes from that conversation. Yeah.
It will, because I think it's right,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So, but I gotta talk to, I gotta talk to the professors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we've been discussing, your book focuses on 10 years of your life, and it's just pretty incredible to just realize, going through the book, how much you did in that span of time. Like, you were
Yeah.
really able to do and accomplish so many different things within a decade, and it's just really incredible to see that journey throughout the book.
Thank you.
Maybe it relates to what you speak to at the beginning of the book about being young and inspired and soaking up everything like a sponge, as most of us do when we're that age. But there's this undeniable energy that you can feel behind every photo, every interview, every piece of your creativity that you've shared with us in this book. And I've wondered, as you've gotten older and you've continued to develop and grow in your talents and pursue new endeavors, have you looked back to this time in your life for inspiration?
Absolutely. I think I think that what I love about the book is how innocent that passion is. And I think that, the complications of what was going on for me emotionally and personally in that decade in terms of finding myself and coming to grips with things that I was dealing with personally and emotionally, knowing that I was able to have this like really, unobstructed, very raw, passionate voice that was like really that was really present for everything that happened. I absolutely draw inspiration from this era because for me it represents just doing it,
Mm.
And I think that arguably the book for me personally came about at the right time because I feel that same sense of momentum and energy in my life right now. I really kind of can feel like, okay, well, I want to do this. I'm going to go do this. I've always kind of had a little bit of that blind or dumb ambition, which is like, the world's really hard, right? You're going to fail, right? It's like, yeah, but fuck you. I'm just going to fucking do it. And it's like, well, it's never going to be that easy, but I'm going to do it. I've always had that. And I think going back to this era and back to this moment just is always this reminder that I can do it. And then I think there's this other component that's really been really powerful for me to feel, which is just the privilege of being a custodian for something.
Mm.
And that for a lot of people, this era was kind of the best time in their life that they look back on and they love it. And those videos that I made or was a part of making are so important for them. And some of the music and those figures and Dell's creativity means so much to so many people. And so to see that through my eyes, you just kind of go, wow, what a fortunate place I was at. But I was only there because I was like, I didn't know any other way. I had to be there, right?
Mm.
I had to take that photo of Dell. I had to do that. And so that idea means now that if I say to myself, I have to do this, like I have to do it. And so that's another takeaway I hope people take from the book. I'm glad that you felt that because that is the book. And that is the story with the Chuck D photo, is that I wanted to be in and a part of something. Like, of course I met Chuck D, right? Like that's the deal. Of course I did. Of course he did the afterword for the book. Of course. Like, but it only happens because you make the effort. Right. Nothing comes out of this. Like it feels like all these things happen. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's all intent in our lives. And what we're intentional about and what we put our attention on is usually what gets the most energy. And I think that's one of the challenges with being a creative person is you get so fragmented because fragmentation is contagious for artists because you feel so like present and like all the fibers in your body are like standing up. But the problem with fragmentation is you just can't get anything done. So, the intentionality of like, I'm doing this. I want to be the high-row photographer. I'm going to do this. I'm going to record the studio. I'm going to do that. But I was still in college at the same time. I was still doing all these things, So I'm grateful that people can interpret that and feel that because it's there.
Yeah.
It's just a kid who wanted to be liked. It really is. It's just a kid who wanted to be a part of something and wanted to feel special because of the ways he didn't feel special at the time. So,
yeah,
like all of us.
Fun, even funner, I'm the gunner, submachine like. It don't seem right that they don't get my theme right. They don't know me, so we move forward. More words and phrases, my style amazes. Coming into the scene with the means to rip shit. My brain's power packed with the proper equipment. So step, I crept into the area to bury ya. I compose the flows, making people merry. Nevertheless, I sever the flesh with the razor. Reserved for major beef, I'm a slayer. You never came across a person like me. I never instigate, first come strike me. Then I flip and rip clothing. And I'm loathing MCs who front like I don't know things. Check again, I get wreck again on the down low because you sound slow. Retarded MCs get neglected and check it. Anytime I have to show a foe, I'ma flex it. Then I exit with my records in my next shit. Prepare, so be scared, I strike unexpected. I write rhymes in sections, testing my slang. I bang MCs with these and make them hang. Dangle, what's your angle? When I strangle and choke, I hold Benedict's by the throat until they sing notes like a canary, very a genius. We slipped out, they never seen me bust his face. I like bass when it hums, and that sums up my properties for the dum-dums. Someone needs to check him, deck him, slam him, and put him in the bushes. So shush kids, no one needs to know. I proceed and go into, and then tell you what I've been through. In one ear, right out the...
Every episode, we ask our guests to pick an album that is a personal classic, influential on their life or art in some way, favorite record, whatever it may be. So today, we are, as we have mentioned, talking about Del the Funky Homosapien and No Need for Alarm. Jacob, when we were discussing which album to talk about for this segment, you mentioned that No Need for Alarm is super important to you. That kind of starts with the track Eye Examination, which was a B-side on the
Dr. Bombay, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like what has made this record so important.
You know, No Need for Alarm is a very important record to me because it's basically the record that I interviewed Del for in the Blunt magazine article that's at the center of the book. And it's my like first time that I meet Del in person. It's the first time that I get to ask him about his art and his craft. It's the first time, you know, I get an unreleased record from the artist, you know, that I'm hearing something that no one else has heard for the first time. And I think No Need for Alarm, well, I know that No Need for Alarm is important to me because of the dialogue between I Wish My Brother George Was Here and No Need for Alarm and everything that happens in between. So to kind of set the stage for that, you have, you know, I Wish My Brother George Was Here, which, you know, produced by Ice Cube and the Lynch Mob, and you know, or not Lynch Mob, in production, right, is Street Knowledge. So Del is signed to Street Knowledge on Elektra, and he comes out with this record, and he's going to be this funk rapper. And Del loves funk. He loved, you know, George Clinton and all that. He even had, you know, all these cast of characters on that first record. But in a way, that record sort of, it's a very personal record to Del, but it's not at his core like his talents. He's very good at shape shifting, and then he, you know, crushed that record. He has great raps and there's great tracks and there's all the great songs, great concepts, everything. But it's not really like personal Del. And in that time, I think he records I Wish My Brother George Was Here, comes out in 91, and one of the last singles that is released is Dr. Bombay, and the B-side of Dr. Bombay is Eye Examination. For me, for my money, Eye Examination, at my 50th birthday, I asked Del to perform Eye Examination in Clint Eastwood. One for me and one for my kids. And Eye Examination is one of the greatest expressions that I've ever heard in hip-hop. That's my opinion.
I never had real friends till now. I never had to steal ends, cause that's foul. I walk the streets with a baseball bat feeling secure, but I try not to incite fights that's immature. Actions that come back to haunt. I work hard to get the things that I want and never flaunt, never post where the most guys post high. I keep my focus towards the ground and I pound any brother who's my ace to my face. Even if he snakes on the under, I try not to wonder. Training my brain with mental anguish, strange, it's rather eerie, clearly just a whim. I adjust a him deal with the dealers and the squealers and the jockeys. I can take the fizz out the carbonated copies. Imprints are made in the sand as I walk. Them hints reveal rather grand as I talk. Small individuals seem larger when they take charge of their antics, making them gigantic, so you never suspect their neck being strained. So many situated thoughts in the brain. Heavy weight gain, so I weight train, cause to me the weight gain is a great gain, and I hate saying
It is Del in this trippy acid drug laden womb of creative explosion. And he's sitting at home, he's sampling himself, he's making beats, he's on drugs, but he's so tapped in. Everything, you know, he's writing about is kind of relatable to being a kid at that age. And to me, Eye Examination is an incredible record. There's another song on the Eye Examination demo tape that is referred to now as the Crazy Dell song. And so those all went to Ice Cube, and he was like, didn't like it at all, at all. He's like, but I'll let you put Eye Examination on the B-side of this single. And so that's the only way the public knows about it. Now, we got a demo tape, so we had heard those songs, but Eye Examination comes out, and you're just like, what the fuck is this? And I feel like it's, if you had never heard anything like that in 1992 to hear Eye Examination, that's a whole new landscape of hip hop. My understanding is, as it goes, is Dell is in this Eye Examination zone, and he records 10 tracks for his new album. And they're all in this Eye Examination flow. And he sends those tracks down to Ice Cube, and Ice Cube's like, I'm not with it. I'm not feeling these tracks. So because he's on a production agreement with Street Knowledge, they put everything on hold. So that at that time, Souls and Casual, who had just got their deals done, this is more Domino's story that he's kind of sharing some of the details with me, but they start recording on Dell's studio time, 93 Till Infinity and Fear Itself. So Souls and Cash are now using Dell's studio time because Dell's on hold with Street Knowledge because they don't know about what they like. So now you get back to Dell finally is in the studio. I love this. So they're finally recording what would become No Need for Alarm. Domino's like late to the studio, and they've already recorded a ton of tracks. And he goes to Matt Kelly. He's like, okay, great. Matt Kelly plays him back, and Domino's like, okay. And it comes to find out that they used the tracks that they had recorded, those 10 original songs, to record all the new songs. So they totally recorded over those original 10 songs that he had. Oh. One of those songs makes the album, which is In and Out, which if you listen to In and Out, it has that wow, wow, wow. That's very Eye Examination-esque. And the two other songs that are from that 10 tracks that have kind of been preserved, some of them because I had a dub of them for High Roll Oldies, there's a song called Neighborhood, which I use. These are the people in the neighborhood, in the neighborhood, in the neighborhood. Dell song I used in a skate video later on. And then the What Do You Say, which is what do you say? Do 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 do. What do you say? So those three songs, Neighborhood, What Do You Say, and In and Out, are the only tracks that are preserved from the Eye Examination like womb, which becomes No Need for Alarm. So that's the prelude to what kind of sucks in the energy of what was going on behind the scenes. And for me, No Need for Alarm is just like Dell just telling everyone that he is a fucking incredible MC and he will destroy everybody. It is that whole record is that through and through.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to Domino.
Yeah, incredible guy.
Wow.
So you got to hear No Need for Alarm before it came out, right?
Yes.
That's what it sounds like. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a tape and I still have it.
Wow.
I'm not sure if Dell's handwriting is on it, but it's and that's cool because it wouldn't have sides on it, right? It would be like on a 90-minute play, and it would just be everything back to back, with then a couple of the remaining songs on the B side. But I remember hearing it and like, it sounded right. Because I think Dell, even he's said, he was like, he wanted to eat fools. Like he was like, I mean, it's cool that you liked I Wish My Brother George Was Here, but like I'm a battle rapper, like I'm a rapper. Like I want to rap. Like I'll talk about how I'm gonna take you down. Like, and there's obviously a lot of really interesting stuff that is on No Need for Alarm that I think is like cool trends within, characters and supporting stuff and the production, but
yeah. Did you hear this before you talked to him or after?
After.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't like I got an advance from the label. It was like I saw him. He like gave me the tape, and I like because I even wrote down the names of the songs as I was interviewing him, and I like wrote down songs wrong because I didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And like in the transcriptions of the interview, when I did it for the book, we had to correct stuff because it was obvious that I was like trying to interpret what he was saying. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
you know?
So like after the conversation that you had with him, you listened to No Alarm for the first time. Did you feel more connected to the album, you think, because you
A
had that
hundred
conversation
percent,
with him?
a hundred
Okay.
percent, 100%. It also felt more connected too because it just felt more like a Hyro record,
Yeah.
you know? Everyone's producing on it. It's like it was in that, that there's that era of Hyro with the cellos, right? They have a lot of cellos in their stuff. It's like, I mean, Catch a Bad One's incredible track,
Mm-hmm.
and plus his vocal. People have a memory loss. Like, come on, like, and just his phrasing and everything. But anyway,
People having memory loss. They don't remember I'm the boss. You're claustrophobic when I close it. In on your men and your faculty. You whack a beat out my face. You must be basic if you think that you can tackle the triumphant. I pump in the volume. Increases you mises get sliced to pieces. Please listen to my album. Even if you're white like talcum and a pagan, just stay in tune with my tune, and I presume and see doom designated to anyone who stated a word against me. I serve an MC simply. Put like my foot up your anus, you shameless. Trying to get over, I'ma go for mine. You know the time, now that I'm older, I'm gonna rip niggas' heads with the said salutations. Introducing Dell and it's been for boosting tales of my adventures. Attempt to try and you will limp or die. Whichever I choose, you lose. Crews get ashamed cause we blame them for biting. You might win if you start writing and stop fighting. No time for games, I rearrange my vocals in your headphones. I vote till I get an answer. Acknowledge and abolish all the whack records. Hieroglyphics should know respected. Who caught the horn? You bought the form. If you're a friend, there's no need for alarm. Who caught the horn?
It was interesting to read the transcript of your interview with Dell from this time because it kind of made plain that like he didn't really get exactly what he wanted the first time around, and
yeah,
it really frames No Need for Alarm as kind of like his like coming out party. Like this is,
exactly. That's exactly right.
and the other thing that I love about it, I will admit, I was not into this record when it came out. Like
Mm,
I grew up in Maryland. I had never heard of Dell. I had a good friend who bought the tape, and I was like, I have no idea who that is. I'm not really interested in that. So I didn't come
yeah.
to it until later. But what I love about it is what you were just saying about like it being like a Hyro event. Like these different voices pop up everywhere on the record. It feels like the crew is like in the studio with him, like
Hmm.
that he's part of a collective, and it brings a certain energy to the record that I think is really great.
And I think that energy was stuff that if you were tapped in and had the demos, you knew that energy. Like Who's It On, great high road group track. You've heard of Who's It On, 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 Who's It On. And it's like do do do, and everyone's just rapping and they're just like pop 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 pop. And that for me, like that's what we all related to when we listened to that music. So this had, so many great beats, great appearances. I think the one to me like secret nugget in No Need for Alarm, which unlocks Dell's entire career, is Unicron in Worldwide. And Unicron is, if you are like deep in Dell's catalog, Unicron shows up as a character in Dell's early work. And there's an old demo song that never came out where Unicron is on it, and it's like literally everyone who listened to this record was like, "Who is fucking Unicron?" And you'd ask Dell, and he'd be like, "Oh, he's just this kid." Well, of course, it's Dell modulating his voice, but the idea that he created a character and modulated his voice and has a back and forth and is like rapping, and you're like, this kid's dope, and it felt that way. I mean, and maybe you're like, oh, I'm dumb, like it should be, but like we legitimately felt like, oh, that's definitely not Dell, it's definitely this kid rapper. And that you go to Deltron, right? You go to Gorillas, it totally all makes sense. And that's the first appearance in Worldwide. public appearance of Unicron.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think you guys are both saying this, but this feels like this is the album where he was saying, like if you thought, the other stuff I did was cute, like get a load of this. Like I feel like
100%.
I feel like he was really like no stops. Like he was just going in on other MCs and just
Hmm.
like I don't know, he has this energy throughout the album that it's just like almost like, but it's not like he's trying to prove himself.
Mm-mm.
He's just doing it, and he's
Yeah.
doing it so well. And he's like, that's all you need to know, basically.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to prove myself to you. I'm good. Like
Yeah.
and that's enough. This album and what I'm doing is enough proof. Like I don't need to say anything else other than that. Like I don't know if I'm describing that in the right way, but
Yeah. I feel that completely. I mean, I think the beauty of this record is it's a very confident record,
yes,
right? And
yeah,
we love confident records by artists who know who they are and they're not trying.
exactly, yeah.
And it's like you go through all the tracks and it's like it's a really dynamic record that has some great tracks that are like radio friendly, like Wrong Place is like what a great song. It's really kind of relatable. Wrong place, wrong time. Like, okay, like, all this stuff comes from his mind,
Yeah.
you know? Even
Yeah.
thank yous to me is so special, you know? It's literally just read the lyrics of that whole song. He's just acknowledging, his fan base. Thanks for listening to me, but does it in such an eloquent way. And the piano and all that is like, that's such that Hyro sound, that piano, that cello, there's like a production moment there. And everyone's touching the record too, which is great. I mean, Casual produces Catch a Bad One, which kind of like makes sense with Casual's record with some of the cello stuff and all of that,
Hmm.
those samples coming through. But it's like even that, like Casual produced Worldwide and Catch a Bad One. Two very different tracks.
Yeah.
These kids are
Yeah,
like 20 years old. Like it's crazy.
it is crazy. There's definitely a freedom you can feel on here versus the first album. I just feel like it just felt like the energy was free. Like I'm
Yeah.
just going to do this. It's great.
One of the other things that I love about this record, and actually all the Hyro stuff from around this time, is just the contrast that it provided to everything else that was sort of happening in West Coast hip hop at the time.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think what made the Hyro stuff sort of stick for me as a kid from the East Coast was that it didn't sound like it was from the West Coast. I was like, oh, this is the jazziness, like feels a lot like the stuff that I already listened to. And his move away from like the funk that we were talking about on the first record to like the piano, cello, jazzy sound made that contrast possible. And
Yeah.
I like that about this record.
I think, when I was in film school, one of the exercises that we had to do in a film theory class was dissect a poster for a movie and what it communicated and conveyed and what you could learn. And I think it's important. His first record, it's this very graphic cover. He's sitting on the chair, he's somewhat obscured by the landscape and the environment. And the title's there, and his name is not so pronounced. And knowing Dell, this kid grew up playing video games and reading comic books. This record is him, right? The cover is a comic book with his little drawn graphic of his own face, which is a check mark to his own artistic expression. He's got his, graffiti tag name. That's the way he does his name. That's the big ass title is Dell, So in a way, I think that what you're talking about is really communicated just in the presentation of the album artwork, you know. And he had the Hyro sticker on the boombox, which again, if you're a fan at that point, you're like, damn, I gotta get that Hyro sticker, like how did he have a Hyro sticker? Like, those things didn't exist until those next years when Jive got involved with Souls, which is kind of basically at this point the same time. Like technically, No Need for Alarm should have come out before a 93 till, but because of the delay, Souls comes out first. But I feel like the artwork is a good way in, you're kind of seeing Dell and, there's that sort of Asian feeling temple behind him. And I just remember looking at, all that artwork. And then there's the other one where he's like squatting down low next to his boombox. And it's like, it wasn't an East Coast boombox, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
a little curved round one that felt a little bit more attainable, not as like flashy, which I think has always been Dell's strength.
Mm.
Certainly a shapeshifter. He's had such an interesting career.
Yeah.
He loves, he loves it. He really loves hip hop and he loves rapping, and he's so intelligent and so thoughtful, but he's an artist, like just as pure as they come. That's why we love him.
How's he felt about the book? Like, what's, I'm sure he's been excited. Like, could you share, like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I brought, I'm very honest about the fact that Mike Carroll from skateboarding and Dell are my muses in this era. The two people I wanted to make happen, the two people I wanted to please. And when I brought him the book, I'd been talking about it, but like everything, you talk about stuff and it's like an abstraction, and then it's like they see it and they're like, oh, now I know what you're talking about, but he was overwhelmed, to experience it. He was overwhelmed to experience the gallery opening as well. There was so much love at that opening event, and he performed. He just started freestyling. He just grabbed the mic, started freestyling. He had a pretty traumatic event, falling off stage at a gorilla show,
Mm.
and broke his leg, and really mentally just took him a long time to recover from that. So seeing him with a mic again, like in an intimate setting, just feeling himself is like the best. And he's such a performer. Like, I mean, he just grabs the mic. He could be as shy as everything, but then he grabs the mic. He just didn't want to stop freestyling. But I think the book has, his brother Tyson passed away. And, there's that photo of him and Tyson in the room, and Tyson's playing video games and they're sitting together. And that I think was emotional for him to see,
Mm.
and I think he just was, he's always like, damn, blood, I didn't realize you had so much of this stuff. And it's like, yeah, I think he's grateful that that much of the documentation exists, and I think,
Yeah.
and he loves skateboarding, a lot. So he's, a huge fan of skateboarding, which he wasn't as much in that time that we were together, but over his life, he's kind of migrated to skateboarding and become interested in skating
Yeah.
himself.
I imagine the culture really embraced him.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's like he's like the Gons of rap.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful that this documentation exists, that we've got to get a taste of it and live sort of vicariously through these images and artifacts.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for that, and
Yeah.
thank you for this time. Thank you for sitting down with us and sharing some of it with us.
Yeah, thank you for bringing the, just the feeling and the intellect to the questions and the discourse. Like so much of the work is about how people react to it. So I always like going in cold to conversations, and you both really pulled great stuff out of it, and hopefully more people listen to No
Yeah.
Need for Alarm and understand that place in the journey. And yeah, just what a gift those guys, that chose to make music.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you want folks to know? Anything you want them to be looking
I
at?
mean, you can pick up the book on my website, which is just jacobrosenberg.tv/shop. My gallery show at Heavyweight is culminating this weekend. I have a closing event on the 25th. We're going to do a little fundraiser and sneaker drive for victims of the LA fires. And I'll talk about the work, and I bring some artifacts from my archive that aren't showcased in the show, and hopefully bring the show to a couple other places. Like there's been some interest in Europe and hopefully in the Bay Area. So if it's something that you're passionate about in your own hometown, there's a backstop for it. I really love the show itself is as interactive as the book. There's tons of artifacts in the show. And then there's actually lots of audio stuff. So all those demos that I'm talking about from Hyro, I have a a listening station with the original demo tape that I bootlegged, and you can listen to that whole thing.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you again. This has been great. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, folks, this has been The Next Movement. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Peace.
I seek souls like mine, so my mind finds inner peace and a beast could never devour. My power derived from survivors of this Holocaust. Keeps me hopeful, never thinking all is lost in my sector. Expect to slide and colliding with my lifestyle, so I fight wild when they threaten me, sweating me. Though I'm quite mild, the world makes me gnarly, but an introvert not hardly. I deal with it, I feel of it. Another weather, I need to pull my pieces back together, falling apart, stalling a heartfelt sincerity, since there will be another stoplight, and it's not right, so I might go insane. Nothing framed of mine, maintain a line that has been tamed. Before the tempest, I'm looking towards my better interests. I never tried to post or try to impress anyone, so why do I gotta suffer? Every single day it seems the way of the world is rougher, and then you wonder why I love to hallucinate, because I never ever thought I would get used to hate. So I embedded my time within my mind, and rhyming was the only way I kept from being confined to chord. And short is good times and bad, but the bad times are overwhelming. And how